Hello. Uh,
Hi.
okay, we'll have to time our push to talk. But essentially, welcome everybody to our Speaker Sunday. This one's very special and dear to us because we're going to be reviewing the Kickstarter campaign and what happened.
Yep. We're going to be going through the very beginning from when we were preparing all the way to the very end where we succeeded. And so it's going to be quite the little story.
And just to introduce us real quick, my name's Lilette,
And I'm the Lazy Warlock.
also known as Tony,
Yes, I am Tony.
and we're the I guess co-creators of this Kickstarter. I really can't claim like I really any of it until the Kickstarter happens. Um, Maybe what we can do is just start off with a quick intro for those of us who are new in the chat. And then also for those of you in the chat, feel free to ask anything under the sun. We'll do our best to answer. And yeah, I'll keep an eye out and call them out as they come in. But yeah. So who are you, the Lazy Warlock?
So I'm the lead developer of Lords of Nysera. So I've been working on the game for a few years now, and really only full time for the last year and a half, maybe. I do the artwork, I do the code, I do the story writing, and the world building. I don't do the music; that is done by Adam Bow. And then Lilette here takes care of literally everything else. So what do you do, Lilette?
Well, okay, so he's been making this world for 10 years. I want to clarify. He's being very, very modest. Um, I I guess I would be considered the producer of the game. We actually met with a producer just a little bit ago, who worked for Lucasfilms, which was really cool experience, and it made me realize because she is a producer for the Tomb Raider game, stuff like that. Made me realize that a lot of what I do currently, from the Kickstarter start up until now, is producer work. So that's kind of what I do. Is
So give us a little rundown. What does it mean to be a producer then?
um so producer is making sure that Lazy Warlock has everything he needs to succeed, and you're very interested in the QA of the game, so quality control, and then making sure that things are great experience for the player, and also just the production of the game. So making sure that we deliver the product at the end of the day. So making sure we're on time with things. So
Sounds great. So we're going to start off with how we prepared for the Kickstarter then. It was about a 2 month experience of building up all of our footage to start doing the trailer, which Lilette did. Lilette did the entirety of the trailer, editing, video work, and whatnot. I don't even know how it works, honestly. I just watched her do it, and it was incredible. Especially because she hit the ground running and just learned from like a week's worth of time to do it, and it was amazing. Because if you guys don't know, trailers are really expensive, and so we uh, we spent a lot of time getting that ready, including having to completely redo a lot of our work because I did all this footage thinking it's gonna look great in the trailer, right? And then turns out we needed to refilm it all because the GUIs were up and there were cursors that made it look bad or that just moved too quickly. So um, Lilette was incredibly helpful in making sure that happened and that we got a great trailer out. Like that trailer that we made was made by her, and it looks professional in my opinion. So
Lazy, that's really kind of you. I am really proud to just be part of this project because honestly, just seeing his work all throughout the years leading up to the Kickstarter has been such a cool experience. And I know a couple of our backers out there have seen your art and the World of Nysera from the start too, and so they've had the pleasure of being able to follow that journey because it has been a very long, long, long one.
yeah, it has.
But enough complimenting me, Tony. because you're
Okay.
gonna make me blush.
Okay.
I can't do that on camera. But yeah, okay, so let's go right into the Kickstarter.
Mm.
So, when did you decide when we should have the Kickstarter, all of that jazz?
So, about a month or two after I left my job to work on Lords of Nysera full time, I made a roadmap. So, it was actually your suggestion. You said you should make a roadmap of what you want to do for the game. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll just make one up then. And so I made this very ambitious plan for a whole year of work. And by like after the year and a half point, I wanted to do the Kickstarter. I felt like I needed to push myself, set a deadline, and then just go for it. I only got about half of the roadmap done, but I still stuck to my plan of a year and a half later, I would do the Kickstarter. I would make sure I have something to show for and that people can play and look at and think, "Oh, this is great. I like this is something worthwhile," right? And that way I could really actually start making the game in earnest. Because there's a difference between making the game, coding the game, right? And then actually having a game exist out there that people know about and play with and are curious about because that's part of because there's two sides to the game, right? There's the developers and then there's the players, and I didn't have the players yet, so I wasn't really making a game just yet, in my opinion at least.
Okay, so to recap, you
Yes.
decided to do the Kickstarter and the convention at the same time a year and a half ago, and then you started to prepare for the Kickstarter 2 months prior. Was that a good idea in retrospect?
I'm kind of mixed on it. I think it was a lot to do, and funny enough, the convention was not too hard to prepare for, because it mostly consisted of making sure there was a demo to play, which sounds like a lot of work already, right? But it was even more structured and limited than what other people have played right now. And I knew kind of what I wanted the setup to be, so it was like making sure we had a lot of things already. We had a projector, so it's not like we had too much to prep for. But it was the Kickstarter that required a ton of preparation, and that I really didn't know much about. And I definitely think I would have done them at different times because I was starting off the Kickstarter very tired after those first 2 days at the convention because it sucks a ton of energy out of you. It's just a lot of work to get there early, set up, yada yada yada, and talk to people all day long. So I definitely think my energy levels were at an all-time low starting out the Kickstarter, and that's when I needed it the most actually. So I think that was my only regret in that I should have maybe done the convention like 2 days before I did the Kickstarter, maybe. But how do you know how things would have turned out otherwise? It might have been the way that we even got such a great start, right? Because we did have a great start initially, and so I don't have really any complaints there. So I think it worked well. It just was a ton of effort, is all.
Awesome. And then, so come Kickstarter day, how'd that go?
Well, you were there. What do you think how to go then?
uh, um, I love conventions, I gotta say. So I was excited to go just because I've never been on the other side of the table before. It was really busy, I remember that day, and the first couple hours we're setting up, we were getting the booth set up, which consisted of, I believe, two monitors, which we intended to just have the demo running on, and with the keyboard in front of that whole thing. And then, so we had to set up the PCs to get that figured. And then we also had that projector in the background with the trailer going the entire time. And then we even set up some music to play as people walk by to kind of just alert them, like, hey, like, there's this game here. So the first 2 hours was a technical, logistical scramble. And then after that, it was getting into the mindset of, okay, there's definitely people here. We've got our thing set up now. You need to talk to them. And I remember that there's this moment where I was like, what the hell do I say? So there was that too, where I'm like, okay, I've never in my life done this before. So we were kind of finding our words the first couple hours, and then you get into the groove of, okay, I know what to say now. Uh, Here's the common questions, ask that sort of thing. So after that, like it was smooth sailing, and we also had the pleasure of Tony's family who came to help us out, and even my family came. I don't know if they actually helped us out, but they came. So seriously, having folks help us out, getting set up was huge, because you have just so much stuff in your mind that you're trying to juggle and keep track of. So it just was really nice. Yeah, so that was kind of my perspective. I felt like once we got to probably about 2 p.m. In the afternoon, where we just have like 3 hours left and like people are kind of getting lunch and stuff, um, it felt like we're in a good place, you know. The only thing is, I wish we had Wi-Fi because then we could have actually tracked the Kickstarter or like showed people the Kickstarter page. So it was kind of a surprise once we actually got out to where we could look at the Kickstarter page, see how we were doing, because that was kind of at the back of my mind too. Like, how are we doing? I don't know. We don't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I don't think maybe every convention is the same, but for us, we had to purchase Wi-Fi for individual computers. So we couldn't just purchase it for our booth. And we figured that out eventually, like, oh, we can't just, because I got it for the booth, knowing that I would want to, potentially fix something for the game or whatever. And then we realized the internet was just horrible, horrible everywhere, and only being able to have Wi-Fi on the two computers that people are playing the demo on means that you can't check on anything. So yeah, we were kind of in the dark as to whether or not it was doing anything. And also people who came to it, right? So we had cards. Thankfully we had cards. So we handed out a ton of cards. We went through over like almost 200 of them, I think. We handed out a ton of them. And so the cards, so if you ever do a convention, make cards. They're super useful. Um, but yeah, otherwise, I think it was great. It was honestly a ton of fun. It was definitely worth it to do just to meet people and to watch people play the game itself. So I would say, was it a good idea to do it at the same time as a Kickstarter? But it was fun. It was great still. And it was a good story. So.
Yeah, I would definitely space that out for next time. And then, okay, so the first 2 days, because we did the Kickstarter on a weekend, went pretty well, because we had new backers every day. So it felt pretty good. Uh, I know things weren't as awesome the entire time, so let's get into that. Starting with the infamous third day.
Yeah, so one thing we also weren't really aware of, right, is the trend that Kickstarters have. So we were expecting kind of to have the same explosive meteoric rise that we got in the first 2 days, right? That's not what happens. It starts off really strong for almost every single Kickstarter. Starts off strong, and then there's this leveling off for about 20-ish days, and then it starts to pick up towards the very end. We had no idea that that was the trend that most of them have, and so we immediately thought we were doing something wrong, or at least I did, and then we had to pretty much change our method and try out a bunch of different ways to reach out to people because we saw that we weren't going to meet our goal in 3 days or 4 days or whatever it was, right? We were going to have to work for it. So we started trying out all these different ways to promote. And we had done some promotion up to this point, but it had been just my small little media posts sharing the game. This time we had to really kick it up a notch and talk to everybody we knew and reach out to them all and try stuff out. And this is where Lilette really came in with her networking abilities, talking to people that she knew. I mean, hundreds. I gotta think at least a couple hundred people that she reached out to specifically, just to share the game, just to share what we were working on. And that's really where we were able to keep things going until we finally cracked the code on a few of these subreddits and whatnot, and finally broke through that threshold. But that third day was hard because we saw the immediate drop off of how much money was coming in and where we were going, and I like to say we scrambled. She likes to say we were figuring it out. We were just like, just running with it and seeing what works. And it was freaky for me and exciting for her, but in the end, it obviously worked out well. So um, that was the third day up till the 13th day. The 13th day was real interesting. Would you like to explain that one, Lilette?
Was the I didn't count the number of days,
Oh, I
so
was counting them for sure.
I'm assuming we're talking about the video.
Yes.
Okay, I can talk about that. Yeah, so the the 13th day. I didn't know it was 13th. Um, that's like an unlucky number, I feel like in some
Yeah,
cases.
oddly enough.
Okay, cool. It was fated then. So the 13th day, as you all know, we sent out an update saying we weren't sure if we could release on consoles like Switch, PlayStation, Xbox. Because for several reasons. The main reason being you have to get developer approval for those consoles. So you have to, you know, send out, hey, I'm making this game. I would like it on PlayStation, for example. And then it goes through this administrative, super boring process where they say yay or nay, and they get back to you whenever they can. So we, at that point, didn't have that. And we were going under the assumption that, okay, we submit it, we hear back relatively quickly, but we didn't hear back quickly, and we still haven't heard back for some of them. And one of our backers gave us the heads up that, particularly for the Switch console, that indie developer they saw other indie developers really struggle getting their game on Switch in particular. So uh, we didn't want to promise something that we couldn't deliver. We're very nervous about that because, um, I mean, for one, like I think we just feel morally bad. Like, that's a no-no. Why are we saying it's going to be released on that and when it's not 100%? So, um, yeah, it was kind of a crappy feeling because in a way you kind of feel like you misguided your backers. Um, and then you think, well, how am I going to rectify this? And we decided on making a video because we're kind of not old school, I would say, but we felt like the right thing to do was to show our faces and say, like, hey, here's the reality of the situation. Do choose the best thing for you. But I do remember filming it, and it was kind of in that moment we felt pretty shitty. Excuse my language, but yeah, it kind of sucked.
I
So that
remember you even filmed it with like this sad music in the background. I was like, this is already depressing enough.
I do remember that. Yeah, yeah. Actually, it is a little cringy now that I, I've listened to it retrospectively. It's a little cringy. But you know what? It matched the mood. Let me
It
tell
was
you.
definitely how we felt in that moment.
You guys are gonna find out we're sadly transparent. So we're still working on that. But yeah, that was a really just sad day for us, and we had, I think, in our minds, it was kind of like standing on the the a whole barrel of unknown because we didn't really know how many of our backers wouldn't be able to play the game and would be bummed out, stuff like that. And we kind of expected the worst. Um, and we did, take. We sadly watched some backers leave, and that's always sad because you feel like you disappointed people. At least from my perspective, I should really speak for myself. Like I don't like disappointing people. Um, but it wasn't. I think it was done the best way we could have done it. So yeah, that was, I would say, like the point of the campaign, emotionally low point of the campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, because in the long run, it actually didn't affect it too much. Because again, if you look at the little trend of the graph, it didn't really disrupt it. It's a tiny little blip down, and then just continued upwards. So, I think it showed that, people saw that we were working on something very fun and interesting and that we were passionate about, right? And that wasn't going to deter them from wanting to be a part of it as well. So that was reassuring for us because it gave us the courage to just keep going forward, keep working on this, and that it was going to be okay. And obviously, it did turn out just fine, especially as we got more comfortable with reaching out to people and we started chatting with old friends about what we were doing. And it started to be like this really wonderful experience of kind of coming back from our lowest point. And then we broke into these little subreddits, and then we were so close to that little the 12,000 mark, right? And then the community was just like, we're not gonna wait till tomorrow or 2 days later. We want it now. So it just shot up and then took off from there. And then it was just a crazy, wild, positive ride at that point. Just watching everyone just come in, and it showed up on the front page of Kickstarter for a while, and we were super excited. And then at that point, we were just kind of riding on the high of it and greeting everybody joining in on it and talking about the game. So,
Yeah, one of the things that really kept us going throughout was the community, because when you're presenting to the world your creation, and I'm sorry, I'm really speaking from like what I've observed from you, Tony, but like that's a huge moment where your creation meets the world, and the world can say anything they want. There's no rules as far as what they can say about it, and that is like, whew, that can be very uh,
it gets intense.
intense. Yeah, intense is the right word. Yeah, and so you really get a lot of opinions out there, right? But you also realize that there's quite a few people who love what you do and see what you're doing and want to follow along. And I think that's what you hold on to, you know, that uh, you have something worth sharing, and then you start making that product for those people, like um, just paying attention to what they have to say. And I think when you change your attention from, you know, the negative, like what people are saying, to the positive. And I'm not saying that there was like a lot of negative actually. In fact, there was overwhelmingly positive. It's just interesting how like sometimes, when you're driving on a road and you look at the tree, like your car heads towards that tree, and it might be the only one there. It's just where your focus is. And so I think what really pulled us through is just going back to our grassroots, right? And connecting with our people, and hearing what they have to say. And it was just really cool to see on the Discord too. Like people would post, um, "We're almost there, guys," and like you can't help it as a creator, just being like, "Okay, all right, I'm gonna go and promote the game. Gonna try to get those stretch goals for people, because they're really excited about it, and moving forward." So
Yeah. Um, and on the topic of too of just like feedback, right? When you've worked on your game by yourself for so long, just putzing around with it, making it's fun, right? But you do have this fear of like, what will happen when I finally show it to the world, right? What will people actually think of it? Even before they play it, right? What will people say to me when they just look at my game? And it is true that like you'll get 9 out of 10 comments will be like, "This looks so cool. This looks really fun. I love this. I love that." But then you'll get the one person who writes out this long thing that is very critical of your game, right? And is doubting of whether or not you can make it, and saying, "I don't know what I think about this or that." And it can be hard to ignore it can be hard to not ignore all 9 of those positive things and just focus on that criticism, right? Because it those hit the hardest, right? When it's like, oh, someone didn't like it, and they took the time to write out this long thing about how much they don't think that your game is going to succeed or something, right? Um, and you wonder like, well, are these people, do they know something that I don't know? It puts that like thought of dread in your mind. But you eventually learn that people want to help you actually succeed by providing these things, right? They give this information because they want you to be critical about yourself and to so that you can make something really cool in the end. That it that does truly become something great. And that's just something you have inevitably come across when you're finally breaking through that threshold of seeing what the world thinks of your game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the one of the biggest criticisms I think, which is super constructive, honestly, um, is scope creep, which a lot of you hear a lot about that in the indie game dev
Yes. Uh huh.
community, especially for solo devs, because there's just so much to do when you're developing a game.
Yeah, there
Um,
is. But really, like it's a weird thing because when you have lots of time, right? So when it's a hobby, you can kind of play with whatever idea you want, and there is no such thing as scope creep when it's just a fun thing you're working on. But as soon as there becomes that moment where, oh, now I have to finish a game, then you have to actually give a harsh look at your game and be like, do I really need this in it, right? Do I really have to put this in? Or how much work is this going to be? Is it going to take away from actually finishing the game and making the game, right? So these are all these questions that are good to ask in the beginning, but you don't really do that, at least from my developmental standpoint. I'm a creative, and so I like to make features. I don't like to remove them even, and nobody likes to, of course. So I don't think about that all the time, but I've had to now, and that's okay because it's a good thing to practice. But it definitely becomes something. It's kind of an invasive thought because it's not something you're used to, right? So I'm not gonna blather on too much about that, but it is interesting how once your game gets to a point where it's like, okay, now it needs to actually be made, you have to pretty much start really taking a critical look at what you can include in it, and you hope to bring as much as you can to the table for people to play, but playtesting will prove whether or not lots of those ideas are even worthwhile, anyways. So this is the time to do it.
so at the end of the campaign, I know we're crazy tired. We've kind of taken like a couple days to relax. Not fully, because I see you over there fixing bugs and making up characters.
Yep.
But what's something you would do next time?
If I did the Kickstarter again.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a really interesting thing. So, um, I kind of, I don't know if I consciously thought of it, but I think I was using the Kickstarter to not just kick off development, right? Because Kickstarter is usually used to fund the development for certain things. I think subconsciously thought, well, I'm going to kickstart not just the game, but also the people who support it, right? Like the community that will follow the game through Kickstarter.
Yeah,
Um,
bringing visibility to
Bringing
the game.
visibility to your game because people like to rally around a successful Kickstarter, right? It looks not just good, but it shows that you have a proof of concept that can become something, right? Because you have at least proven to people that it's worthwhile. And so I kind of sought that out as a way to jumpstart the community building around the game so that when it finally is released, there's a footprint, right?
It's not a
And
bad way to go.
no, I don't think so. I don't think it's a bad way to go. But I think if I had done it differently, I would have started that process of building a community earlier, right? Because I'd avoided it for a long time because I didn't feel like the game was ready to be shared. Whereas now that I am having people playtest it all the time, um, it's never ready. It only becomes readier when people play it because that is the best way to know how close you're getting to finishing your game, right? You will never know if people never play it, and being afraid of sharing it because you're worried people might not like it is the wrong way to think about it. Because if people do, like, they actually don't like it, that's okay. It means that you need to change things, right? Because better that you know then as opposed to, hey, my game's out on Steam now, play my game, and then you have all these things that people actually don't like.
Okay, so what do you think about community now? Oh, yeah, sorry guys. Um, we have a cat.
He has medicated food and he tries to eat the food that's not supposed to be eaten. So he likes poison for some reason. Um,
Not that the food is poison. He just
no.
has. Yeah, that's not what
This is a
Tony was saying.
joke we say all the time because to him it's not good, but to any other cat it would be fine.
Yeah, he's got kidney issues. But yeah, so what do you think of community now?
So I've I have so beforehand I have come at it from the perspective, the incorrect perspective of um, community through social media, right? And I don't think that's an accurate way to think of your game. And that I need to make it big on social media, right? To be a popular social media game, because you want to interact with the people that care the most about your game, right? And and those are the people that are seeing what you're doing and want to be along for the ride, not just post memes about it, right? Um, and so you're not going to be able to break into that meme community early on, right? That's like just circulating stuff about your game. You instead want to reach out to the people that are going to care about the development, that are interested in what you're doing. And that includes other devs, right? And so my initial view on to actually answer your question, my initial view on community was that they are the people in the social media circle that spread word on your game. Whereas what I've found a true community around your game is people who like what you're doing and they want to be a part of it and they want to know what you're doing so that they can be along for this ride to see a game come to completion and to contribute to it, right? Through playtesting and seeing what you're doing and giving feedback about it. Um, and you get to learn so much about people, about what they enjoy as gamers and what they like to do in communities. And you get to see more than anything what they're doing as well. We have this cool channel that Lilette has made that is just about people sharing what they're doing, right? And you meet these cool people that, hey, I do voice acting, or I'm an artist, or I'm a Minecraft pixel artist, right? You just meet all these cool people who do stuff that you never thought you'd meet, just because they like what your game is, right? And they like your game and they share what they're doing because you say to them, hey, this is a community to not just like talk about the game, but to meet people, right? And I guess I've now seen it as more of like a just a place to just have fun and learn and meet people, not just a resource for game development, right? Or a uh, or at like the lowest level, a marketing system, like how to make money, because that's the least important thing to me is like just having followers for money, because I care more about the game development itself. So
I think
there's
that part is definitely obvious. You're very passionate about your creation,
right.
and yeah, I mean, like I can see how starting out you feel kind of salesy, goes counter to
Yes. Uh-huh.
which goes counter to what you uh, you would prefer to be, spending your time. But yeah, I mean, Ed and Soft says money, money, money.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I think like indie devs who make it super or who no, okay, rephrasing. When when you go onto Kickstarter and you see a creator just bagging like millions of dollars on this or that, like it's kind of crazy actually, just how some of these projects surface amongst hundreds of thousands of other projects that we don't see. And so you get this kind of thing from Kickstarter of like, oh gosh, like, what, how the heck did they do that, right? Because that's not the story of most indie devs.
No.
Callie Owl says, one of my teachers words it like, you're selling yourself in a way, and that's the weird bit about it. Yeah, I agree. Like, it is kind of funky being all sales pitchy about what you have to offer. Very, very much relevant. You're right, Callie Owl. It's just a strange feeling, especially um, for folks who aren't making something for money. You know, that's like that is not the intent behind it. Is so, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you know, you need to eat, you need to sleep somewhere at the end of the day. So that it's just like this constant battle with creators of like, well, I don't want to like sell my soul for this. I really want to create things, but also money is like weirdly tied in with your creation. So
And that the topic that you brought up too about Kickstarters, right? They seem to just pop up out of nowhere and they do crazy well, right? Most of those, so there's a lot of hidden numbers too that you just don't see through Kickstarter, right? It can appear like a Kickstarter pops out of nowhere and just blows its goals out of the water, and you think, oh my God, they must have just this incredible product, right? That is just capturing the hearts and minds of people that they're buying in so quickly, right? But what you realize very quickly is that before they started their Kickstarter, they had 3,000 followers, right? They had 3,000 people who already invested in the game. They had a presence on other media sites. They had their community built, right? Before they even started the Kickstarter itself. And you can't compare yourself to those Kickstarters either because it can get very discouraging to look at other Kickstarters, even similar games, right? Even games that like you might be like, well, my game's better than theirs, so why aren't I doing better than them, right? And you can't look at it that way because they come from a different place. They might have a team, right? We had a team of 2 people, and there's Kickstarter groups that have 7, 8, 10 people in them, right? And
I mean, correction, team of one because you created the game. I joined in when the Kickstarter started.
yeah, but I mean that's the thing is we had a team of 2 while the Kickstarter was running,
Okay,
right?
okay, fine.
That's fair, I think.
Okay, it's
Um,
fine.
because there are people who this just their job to do the Kickstarter, right? Like there's a dev guy, there's a sound guy, there's another dev guy, and then there's the marketing person that's like their job is to do TikToks and and the Kickstarter. And they have a budget for it, right? And we didn't have a budget for that. So we just sort of ran with it and just see what happens. And, you just kind of hope, you cross your fingers and hope it works, right? And you just work hard every day to the point of exhaustion to make sure it happens. And then when it finally reaches that point, you can finally just rest a little bit and talk to people that are actually joining in.
And again, that was our experience, right? Because we were building presence, we were building that visibility during the campaign,
Yes.
whereas most people, okay, I don't know about most people actually. I'm gonna check myself there, but it would be good for people who are creating on Kickstarter to do all of this beforehand. We even looked at a simple equation where it's like if you have X number of followers, you know, you can kind of expect a certain percentage of those followers to uh, be backing on day one. So just having a community is really helpful, and then also understanding that community too. I think one of the things we're continuing to learn about is what kind of people like your game, Tony, uh, and what matters to them, which is actually going to play a very significant role in the next 15 months of development because we'll be laser focused on delivering on those fronts.
Mm.
What we're calling the MVP, you know, the most viable product. What folks would really want um, come February 2025.
Right, and hammering out that MVP is tough, right? Because um, when you make a game kind of like ours, you have all these different things that come into play, right? Like I'm a big world builder, but I'm also trying to make a specific type of game, right? And there's also a specific aesthetic that we're learning that some people like and some people don't like. And you quickly find out that you're not really sure where your target audience is, right? Because you're drawing in so many people that have interest in your game, but you're not sure where they will fit into liking the gameplay, for example, right? Um, and in lots of ways you get kind of conflicting interests, which is funny because you can people get excited about your game, but they're excited about different things about the game, right? I have lots of people who are excited about the characters and they're really interested in how the story will play out. But then you get lots of people who are interested in the tactical aspect, right? And they want to see a really strong tactical experience.
It almost sounds like you're building profiles. Here are the profiles of folks. This is what they care about. And uh, one set is like tactically involved. The other wants the story, and then you're trying to find that like happy medium between the two.
Right.
But back to the Kickstarter. So with the Kickstarter completed, what are you going to do next? Does the Kickstarter end when the campaign ends?
Right. So Kickstarter, for one, is kind of funny because, like, when the 30-day mark or whatever mark, you set a Kickstarter ends at, you don't get your money yet, right? Like, there's this waiting period where people get charged for it, and then you have to wait until Kickstarter handles all those charges and they take their cut, and then finally the funds make it to you, which we haven't gotten yet, even after having completed it, right? And then you have to start planning out, well, what do I do next? Um, and so, since we completed, right, my first thought was, well, let's send out our backer surveys. But once we found out that you only get to send it out once, you don't get to send out multiple surveys, we had to think of a different way to do it. And so we thought, let's do Microsoft Forms because that'll be a great way for people to fill out the forms. They can give me more information, and we don't have that one time only thing, right? So if we have to recontact them about something, we can do that. But then Microsoft Forms has its limitations, which we quickly found out. So those of you who have tried to put your name into the name registry, for example, it fills up at 200 entries, which is a weird arbitrary number. But after 200 entries, it says no one can submit to this response anymore. And so I got people coming to me like, "Did I miss out on the name registry thing? I couldn't do it." So I had to go in, check it, download the file, and then clear it out. So, you start even doing the like just starting on the rewards aspect, right? Is its whole other beast of a thing because you have to figure out how it even works. But the fun part has already started, which is actually doing those rewards. So part of our break, our 1 week break, which was not really a break, but was you know it was still toned down from what we were doing, I should say. Um, I got to just start on the backer rewards, which was starting from the characters because those are really fun, and I get to talk to people about the story and their character and where they fit into it and everything. And that's really where we have started so far with our little break. But starting next week is really where we actually kick into high gear and start finishing up the game because that's the goal, right? Is to make the game. And we've gotten already a ton of bugs to fix and improvements to make, which is going to be really fun because we're planning on doing weekly updates. So even if they're small, there will be every Friday some kind of update for people to try out. And hopefully by I'm hoping maybe by a month's time, maybe that might be optimistic. We'll have pretty much ironed out a lot of the things with the arena and the prologue demo itself so that it can actually become a perfect little testing ground for all the new features. So that's actually going to be a very valuable thing moving forward is every time I add in a spell, I'm going to add it to the Friday update. So try out this new spell for those who want to, right? Or try out these 3 new spells, whatever it may be. See if they work well. See if they break the game. See if they're too overpowered, so on and so forth, right? So um, it's gonna, and then eventually, of course, it's gonna go into the playtesting phase. But before we can even get to that, we're gonna be planning out everything, right? We're gonna be planning out how much work it takes to do this. Lilette here is gonna be getting started on user experience and UI fixes, which she is very excited about.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of our plan so far, our pre-plan, I guess. And of course, fulfilling the rewards, right? Like that's going to be an ongoing process because it's going to be part of the development. So it's not something we can crank out in a week. Obviously, it's going to be part of a new update is here's 2 or 3 new backer items that got added in, right? Here's a new spell from this archmage. Here's a new character and their portraits, right? I've already done 4 or so of the newest characters, just their like designs and whatnot. So,
So just to recap
yep,
then, in answer to your or to that question, does the Kickstarter end after it ends? The answer is no, because
yeah.
you
The answer
have,
is no. It just keeps going.
yes, you have rewards to deliver, and making sure that you stay in communication with your backers is super, super important.
Right.
And especially for the folks who um, uh, just love updates, you know. Like me, myself, as a super backer, I think super backer status happens when you get into the triple digits of backing projects, which I regrettably have under my belt. Okay, not regrettably. I love Kickstarter too much, but um, I personally love updates. I like following the game's development, and I think there's a little bit of inspiration to take from these projects we see on Kickstarter because it's just these, you know, I see it as like the average Joe or Jane creating something and actually bringing it to life, which is honestly so difficult to do. Like most folks don't even start that undertaking, and then even if they do, it's really difficult to actually get to a point um, of even launching the Kickstarter itself. And then once you get to the Kickstarter launch, it's also a struggle because then you're trying to reach this goal, and it's this constant stress of like, well, am I gonna reach it? You know, I've done all of this pre-work. Like I don't know. I don't think people see that pre-work. You know, it could be years of work going into day one of the Kickstarter. So yeah, it's just an arduous struggle that it's a very human struggle, and I feel like a lot of people can deeply relate to that, and I think that's why even though crowdfunding is risky, right? We get that feedback all the time of like, oh well, I don't believe in crowdfunding. You know, people really want to invest in a product that's already done and made, but there is something very special, and you kind of want to be part of it. So yeah, yeah. Um, we've got about 10 minutes here, or exactly 10 minutes. And I want to leave some room for the folks in chat to ask any questions they'd like. So pop them in chat now if you have a moment. I see there's a couple of us who are working and listening at the same time, which is so sweet of you guys.
Do we have any questions people have already asked? Doesn't look like it yet, just yet.
No, not yet. Yeah, they've just been enjoying us talking, just chatting. But yeah, as you guys drop things in chat, I will bring them up. But yeah, we only have 10 minutes. Um, any remaining questions that you feel like we haven't covered for the Kickstarter, Tony?
So on the topic of like Kickstarter's ending, I had an interesting question for you. What do you think our final update will be to the Kickstarter?
What do you mean final update?
Like eventually, like, because there's updates every time there's like, say, new backer rewards coming out, or there's a new thing that we promise. Say like, oh, we finally got it out for this console, right? At what point is have we moved on to say a new project, right? Where Lords of Nysera is hits its final like actual update, do we say to our Kickstarter backers, a year or 2 or 3 years from now, like, we did it, guys. We finished the game. It's 100% complete. Thank you all. This will be the last time we bug you over Kickstarter, right? Because I get updates from like a vinyl I've got, 2 years ago that's still in production. And like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember this thing that I supported a long time ago. Whereas
You're
like our game will be out at some point, and then we'll still be probably updating people who were just wondering when's it going to be on PlayStation, right?
Yeah, final update. That's a tough one because um Lazy, I knowing you personally, I feel like you're gonna be that game dev. Actually, no, I know you're gonna be that game dev who you may even you're gonna pull like a Miyazaki, where you're gonna be like, "This is my final addition to the game." Lo and behold, next month, okay, I'm coming back and I'm gonna make a movie. That's literally you in a
Yeah,
nutshell.
there's going to be like out of nowhere, right? This Lords of Nysera like version 3.05 update, and everyone's like, "What's this? Oh my God, they added in a whole new you know, prequel. When was this happening?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I did this a little while ago and decided I would add it in. I thought
Yes,
this game
exactly.
was done." Well, it's kind of done.
Yeah, and Radical said,
Star
just
says,
don't go the Star Citizen route. A very interesting example, actually. So I love to do research to investigate like possible paths, routes that um, to I mean avoid them, right? Like learn from the people who came before you.
"Yeah,
Star Citizen is a great case study actually, and I do recommend for anyone who is thinking of doing a Kickstarter, look at both success and failure that have come before you because it's going to be super super helpful in knowing what to do, what not to do. And then also Radical has a question for us. So I don't know if you mentioned before, but what do you believe was the most critical aspect of running a successful Kickstarter? Do you want to take that one on, Tony?
I would think the most critical aspect, right? We quibbled about a lot of things, and we tried to fine tune a lot of those, like the trailer or the page or the thumbnail, right? Lots of things that we fixed and edited and improved. But I think the core thing that really saw the biggest improvement was reaching our target audience, right? Finding the people that you want the most to know about your game and finding where they hide, right? Finding where they hide and getting approval to share their game with them or your game with them, right? Be it on a subreddit or a Facebook group or anything, right? You find out where the people who are lurking or looking for your game, and then offer, like, show them like, hey, my game is here. This is something being made, and most of them like, oh my God, how did I not know about this? And you just kind of have to be like, we've been trying. Um, and it's hard. It's honestly probably the hardest part, because it can be very discouraging to post stuff on the web and then nobody says anything, right? Nobody knows about it, and so you have to just search for that. So I would highly advise anyone who is doing a Kickstarter, right? Find the people that you think would be interested in your game the most, and then immediately reach out to them first. Be like, hey guys, here's my game. I heard you were talking about, you were looking for this kind of remake or whatever. And I started doing that. And as soon as they find out and they catch wind of it, then they're immediately interested in it, right? And you
That's a
get,
really
so yeah,
sorry.
that's my answer. So,
I was gonna say that's a really interesting take, Tony, because it's a different answer from mine for
hmm
one, and I think it is illustrates how different creator brains can be. I think that's right brain, right? Right brain. Is creator? I can't remember. It's one of them. But yeah, I that's a very interesting answer because it focuses on that promotional aspect, right? Making sure that your game has visibility. And
perhaps that was
that
the
is
most
huge.
like, I don't even know if it was like actually, objectively the the best thing, like the most successful thing, but that was what felt like it felt the most successful to me, right? It was the most what's the word? Um
Like a crowning achievement or something?
yeah, something along those lines. It was what felt like I got the it was gave me recognition, right? It was seeking some kind of recognition for what you're trying to do and finding the people that actually you were seeking recognition from, right? And in this case, like it was people who play tactical RPGs, right? So reaching out to that community and they respond to, oh, this is what I want to play. Like this, I'm all in on this, right? That was the
Right.
most satisfying part for me, and therefore it felt like the most successful. Even though probably the most successful thing was actually making a good-looking Kickstarter page, right? That shows off all the things that you have added into your game, and having it concise and interesting and pretty. That might have been actually the most successful thing because once people caught wind and we were at the top of the pages in Kickstarter, we had consistent numbers every day, right? Um, but it felt like to me. So that yeah, that mostly a subjective feeling and not actually probably what the actuality of it is.
Okay. I'm gonna give may give my perspective on that question, and then
Yeah.
I believe we have one more question before we end the stream from Radical that I really want to get to. But my answer to that is to the question, what is the most critical aspect of running a successful Kickstarter? A, or number one, have a following. We had to do that during the Kickstarter, and it was extremely challenging. Don't make your life hard. Do it before the Kickstarter, and we could talk about that in a different stream. B, treat your product and treat what you're doing like a business, because that's effectively what you're doing is you're running a business now. And that can be a really tough transition from going to I have this great idea to now I have something I want to market and sell, and all of that screams business to me, you know? So if there's anything that would actually be very useful for very first time Kickstarter creators out there is pay attention to how other people run their businesses, because you're going to be doing a lot of the same kind of stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of small businesses out there that you can learn from, because no, you're not going to run a corporation day one. It's going to be starting out small and connecting with people who see the value in your project and want to buy your product. So, okay. So, Radical, last question for the stream. They say, uh, what would you say? Would you say you shared news, information, teasers about the game before Kickstarter to build a following? Or did you wait for the Kickstarter to start first?
So we shared it to like I shared it in the most like lame way, honestly. Now thinking back, like early on, which I had shared to a personal subreddit, which is not useful. I had shared on a Twitter, like a Twitter profile, intermittently, not useful. And I had contacted some streamers, but otherwise had not reached out hardly at all before the Kickstarter. My brain was focused on making sure there's a demo, making sure the Kickstarter page looks nice, and then I had this idea in my brain that, oh, as long as I do that, it'll work out, right? Um, but you absolutely should release information, news, teasers. I would suggest having your trailer out well ahead of time, right?
People
Um,
need a lot of reminders,
yeah, they
frankly.
do. hmm but so it's just like I would suggest you just have as much of a presence as you can, right? And that doesn't mean you have to share a screenshot of your game every single time you post something, right? But being in communication with other devs, um, having your demo out there to play test already, it helps a lot. And definitely, if you can, have like a Steam page early on, right? Because there's we also found that there's lots of websites that scan for new Steam games, even if they just pop up, right? They just pop up and you don't even have a demo out. It's just a new Steam page got authorized by Steam that catches wind on kind of just these automatic scrapers, kind of funny enough, and they just post your game, right? And then people check it out and they learn about new games. You didn't even reach out to these people, these news outlets or these tech articles, and we found like, oh, there's people talking about the game and we didn't even like mention it to them, right? So having as much prepared so that you can just immediately point people in the direction of it, right? Helps a lot.
Yep. And then if you want to think of it, you can in this way, you can think of it as you are socializing your product, right? You're because I think promotion, there's a lot of just kickback, right? People, it just feels like scammy, you know? Um,
You're
Socializing it
you're
is,
building a network around your game, right? You're meeting, and that includes you're meeting people who want to buy your game. You're meeting people who would love to be a part of your game, right? Even if you don't have the money to pay for, you know, someone to do an animation of your game or to do voice acting or all these different things, right? You're still meeting them, right? And they'll talk about your game and you can invite them to discuss what they're up to. And that interaction, that engagement in your community, right? That excites people, and it shows that you're not only a comfortable person to be around, and that you're a welcoming person, and so on and so forth, but that that people can come and just hang out and share, and they people just like that, right? That's a very human thing to be able to share and talk and discuss about just about anything.
and also make sure you return that. It's very important to support your community back.
Right.
Do not make it a one-way thing, please. Make sure that whoever is supporting you, pay attention to what they're doing. Goodness, it's a very basic like thing of just like don't ever treat your supporters, the people in your community, as uh like I don't know. It, be very genuine and authentic. I mean, everyone has a story to tell, and don't treat them like order number.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I've got one more question. I know we're 5 minutes over,
It's all right.
so thank you all for those who are able to attend. But we talked about what is a critical aspect of, the do's, right? Make sure you do this in the Kickstarter to make sure you're successful. How about one don't? It doesn't have to be a mega don't. Maybe just one. Make sure you don't do this thing.
I would say one thing you don't want to do is don't don't promise anything you're not sure of just yet, right? You should be able to like prove to someone that um, you can include something in your game, or that your this type of pottery you're making for people won't break when it tips over, right? Anything that you are trying to make happen in your game, you should have proof that that's what it is, right? If you have a feature in your game, make sure you can show that feature in your game, right? If there's crafting, whatever it may be, show it off. Um, our don't that we did was saying that we can release it for consoles, right? We were unsure of like where we were at with that. We were expecting to be able to, but we started off thinking that it would just be fine, right? But have proof of what you can provide, right? Um, and if you don't have proof, people will be suspicious, right? When people think that, oh, your project's too ambitious, like you don't have enough to show for it, even though you're listing all these things, right? They doubt that you can do it. And you don't want to, you want to, because again, I'm not a business guy, but you're trying to convince people of your product, right? Your product being a game or whatever it may be. You want to convince them of the efficacy and the completeness of it. And so make sure what you're telling people is in your thing is actually there already,
That
right?
could be really hard to do because typically when you're a creator on Kickstarter, you're making something that you haven't made yet.
Right, that's not finished.
Yeah, so this kind of folds into Radical's question. Let's see here. What happens if you are initially able to say you can do it, but then you notice as you're going through it that you can't? It demands maybe too much effort, it's too complex, or just won't work as you would like it to or expected.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an honest kind of mistake, right? That eventually you may have to be transparent with your backers that like, hey, we thought this would work and it didn't. And if you're honest about it and then you do what you can to fix it and make sure either it does work or you ensure that they're still receiving something of equal value, right? So, okay, maybe we couldn't add in, this to the game, but we're going to ramp up this part that we know does work well and that people really do like. Um, you just have to be honest about what you're doing, and you have to be honest with yourself about what you can do, right? Because if you're a small team, you don't know what limitations you have just yet. You may be excited to do something for your game, for your product, for whatever it may be, but you don't know if you can just yet for all these things. And so you have to be simultaneously honest with what you're with the people that are supporting you, and you have to be honest with yourself and admitting that like I can't do this actually, and I need to be okay with saying that I can't make X number of things in a game. Like that's just outside of my reach. It's outside of my capabilities, and admitting to your people that like I couldn't do this, guys, actually, and we're going to either fix it or we're going to find something else to do. So I don't know if that answers the question necessarily, but that's my thought on it.
Yeah, and just learn from people who have says it does answer the
That's
question.
good.
Just learning from how other folks handle snafus like that is also really helpful. So there's been a lot of snafus, especially hugely public ones, and in media. Maybe it's like a drop that goes wrong. I remember seeing Tesla and the brick being thrown at it,
Yeah,
and
the
then
baseball thing, yeah, with the Tesla truck.
yeah, they're obviously still selling Teslas today, but you know, paying attention to how people handle those moments is a good idea. So
And I think someone mentioned how, or yeah, when we actually talked with the producer, right? One thing they brought up with us, right, is that you have shareholders now, and that sounds very official, very stock exchangey, right? But you truthfully do have shareholders. They have bought into your product. They are expecting a return. The return, of course, is like the game, right? They want a finished, good, fun game to play. Um, and you have to, unfortunately, if even if you're not a money person, you have to think of them as your shareholders, right? um, and that means changing your perspective on how you make your game. um, and so I think that's another hard thing that you have to come to terms with when you're a creator type like me, where, I mean, I'm of the opinion that, well, if something's not working, then we just release it a little later, right? But people bought into it wanting it then, right now, right? Like when you told them you would release it. And so the best way you can deal with those troubles, because sometimes you have to delay something, right? You're just going to have to say, hey guys, we planned for this, but we couldn't plan for this thing that went wrong. And so it's going to have to come out later or whatever it may be. You don't want to run into a cyberpunk situation, right? Where it's not ready and you release it and people are upset that you didn't do enough work on it, right? It's like we did the work, we just had shareholders expecting it, right? So you need to be transparent about what you're doing, how things are going. And I think the best way to do that is kind of like we're doing right now, which is getting people involved with trying out the game now, squashing as many problems early as we can, and moving forward with that, with the hope to release it exactly when we can, with the most that we can.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, and my take on that too is there is a way to quantify how close you are to making it, or how far away you are from breaking it. It's almost like if you were uh, doing the books, right? For if you're budgeting. just personally, and you're like, you have this aspiration to um, save up for a purchase. There are some of us who will just be like, well, yeah, I have in my mind I'm going to save. And then they don't put in place things that will actually help them meet their goals when you can definitely do that. Like, get ahead of that. Be responsible. Like, I do believe in transparency, but also, like, I am not a fan of people apologizing incessantly and then not self-reflecting and being better. Like, seriously, just take a look at yourself and make sure that, you're not taking an apology as your product. Like, don't do that. Make sure that you do the best you can to get ahead of the curve and quantify where you're at and admit the risks. Like, if there is an unknown part of your project, you at least know that it's an unknown and make it known. Be like, this thing right here, I can't quantify very well. This is a risk. This represents a risk. So I think people can be a lot more proactive than they actually are. Um, and you have to be actively engaged in that reviewing of where you're at, 1 month into game development, and etc. Like, one of the things that I'm really personally invested in, like earlier in the stream, you asked, what does a producer do? Well, this is exactly what a producer does, is make sure that things are delivered on time. And how we do that is working backwards, right? Where it's like, okay, we say that we're going to have 11 chapters, by February 2025. So when are we going to have the first chapter done? Or the 11th chapter done, the 10th chapter done? You can do a lot of things to make sure that you're aware of what you have in your head, what you're going to do, and then check in with yourself after a week or two. Like, that's why we have sprints, you work in 2 weeks. Because at the end of the 2 weeks, you say, okay, well, in the beginning, I planned to do this. What actually happened is this. Evaluate that and see what we call as your throughput, right? What you were able to accomplish in 2 weeks. And then you have an idea of, okay, well, it's going to take X number of weeks to do the things. So just check in with yourself, keep track of how much you can do, evaluate what you said, and compare it to what was actually done. That'll be really helpful. Oh, there's a lot of chatter, you guys. Obviously, Lazy has been contributing to this. Let's see.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Radical says, work is work, even if it's something you love to do. Edensoft says, yeah, being ahead of the curve is tough, but you get better over time if you try. Absolutely. Agree. And then Radical said, more if you really want to deliver what you promise and make sure it's amazing. Edensoft, freezing my knickers off, so I might lose service again. uh,
Yes, this will be
yes.
on YouTube. So we like to capture it all and then we edit it, make sure it's not as janky in the beginning. That we edit out some stuff. Well, that takes care of most of that, and so we will definitely be releasing this on YouTube.
Thank you all who's in chat right now, and for the folks who are watching this recorded, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, it's been such a great journey with you guys. Really appreciate you.
And thanks for being patient too about waiting for this specific stream because I know we had to delay it and a lot of you guys were a little disappointed. But we have figured out OBS and Twitch finally, and so moving forward we will have better and better streams. So thank you all for waiting as well.
A special thank you goes out to Sir Thank You
Yes.
on Discord, who actually did a dress rehearsal with us. I think that's the correct term. Yesterday, in making sure that this stream goes smoothly, and so special thank you for that. Awesome. That's a wrap, you guys. I think that concludes our Speaker Sunday number 4. We will continue to have Speaker Sundays. I think actually at the end of every sprint, so every 2 weeks, we'll have a Q&A, and you guys can ask us any question under the sun, and we'll do our best to answer.
Yeah, so I think part of that we'll pretty much be recapping what we did for 2 weeks, right? So we'll give a little insight on here's what we worked on for the first bit of it, and then we'll just be taking answers
We'll
or
also have
questions.
Wreck It Wednesdays, which is also streamed on Wednesdays, and that's where we fix bugs live.
Yeah, so I'll be doing that every Wednesday as long as I can because that one's just fun to take care of things that people specifically reported to me.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys later then. Thanks for stopping by.
Bye.
Bye.